My name is Ruman Mahmood, and this is my lab report for Lab 1 Charged Tapes. Regarding the purpose of this lab, it is to observe the transfer of electrons between surfaces and to then determine the magnitude of the resulting charges. The fundamental principles being used in this lab are Newton's second law, as it can be used to determine the net force of the tapes, in this case being 0 newtons. Then Coulomb's law can be used to determine the charge itself based on the separation between the tapes. Finally, the equation for gravity can be used as the experiment deals with objects with mass, so it cannot be ignored. For the preview of results, it was observed during the lab that the two charged pieces of tape were positive and therefore repelled each other. The magnitude of these positive charges were 9.268 times 10 to the negative 9 coulombs. Finally, it was determined that each tape had a deficiency of 5.79 times 10 to the 10 electrons. Observing the model of the experiment, the tapes themselves act as the models, due to them each representing a point charge. With this, the initial conditions of the tapes being neutral and placed on top of one another proves vital. The measurements of the tape with the tape's length, width, and mass and separation were then recorded. The system and surrounding is then observed to determine what forces are part of the experiment, with the tapes being the system and everything else being the surrounding. Finally, assumptions need to be made for the model to serve its purpose, so air resistance is negligible. The tapes will be treated as point charges, and each tape will be determined to have the same charge. Now the experiment will adhere to the following procedure as stated. A tape was stuck to a table, a U-tape is then placed on it, the tape is ripped off and hung, while various objects are moved near the tape. Another U-tape is then created and moved towards the hanging tape until the tapes repel. The distance between the tapes is then recorded to determine the magnitude of the charges. As observed from the experiment, the U-tape was attracted to the neutral hand, neutral book, and the negatively charged pen, while repelling the other U-tape. From this, it can be determined that the U-tape itself is positively charged. The coding model treats the tape as a point charge. The constants, such as the charge of an electron, are set. The force of gravity is equal to the electrical force due to the net force being 0. From this, the charge can be solved for, resulting in 9.268 times 10 to the negative 9 coulombs. The deficiency of electrons can be determined from taking this charge and dividing it by the charge of an electron, resulting in a deficiency of 5.79 times 10 to the 10 electrons. Now, the results may not be exactly correct due to some of the limitations and errors from the experiment, those being that tape is only being used as a model of a point charge. In and of itself is not a point charge. The handling of the tape may have led to a transfer and therefore a change in charge. The tape may have not been held completely vertical, and this could lead to a value that isn't strictly vertical, which would skew results. And finally, the charges of the tape may not have been exactly equal. The discussion asks what would change if electrons were positive and protons were negative, and the answer to that would be nothing, as the interactions are still the same. So opposites would attract, and like charges would repel. The next discussion asks why less handling of the tapes is important, and the answer to this is that contact with the charged tapes may lead to a transfer of charge and therefore a less accurate answer. Some conclusions from this experiment are that everyday objects, in this case being tape, can be used to model point charges and electric interactions. Many interactions that occur every day can be accounted for by interactions between charges. The union of Coulomb's and Newton's second law can be used to determine different qualities of an object. And finally, through the interactions of objects, in this case through touch, charge can be transferred.